I totally understand. Okay, cool. And I know that it's Halloween, so I knew this would be a tricky day to do this, but I know that we had skipped a week or so of our team webinars, so I wanted to make sure we hopped back on here heading into the holidays. So welcome you guys to our Body Electric Weekly webinar. Tonight we're talking about creating a social media plan. Hopefully this is something that you guys find valuable. As always, I want to make sure we leave a little bit of time at the end for questions, because I'm sure I'll forget to mention something, or you guys will have something to ask, which is totally fine. So hopefully before this you had a chance to take a look at the PDF file that I uploaded to the team page today. It is a social media planner. Basically it's just an organized way for you to physically write down your social media plan, and we're going to talk through it a little bit tonight. You might find that maybe you're not on Pinterest, but you do a different social platform. Obviously you can customize it to be your own, but the bottom line really is that, you know, you guys have heard the quote that like failing to plan is planning to fail, right? And the same thing goes when it comes to social media strategy. And I've found that the coaches that I've mentored in the past few years, since I've been working my business as a full-time coach, I've noticed that a lot of coaches that are struggling with time management, and a lot of the coaches who are on the 31st of the month scrambling for Success Club, right? Like scrambling to make it happen in the final hours. It usually comes down to the fact that there was not really a plan in place, that they were sort of just winging it, doing it by the seat of their pants, like throwing something up every day about their workout or their shake or whatever, but not really having a strategy behind when to invite, how to invite, you know, themes, that kind of thing. So I want to make sure that we address this and that this goes into our library of information for new coaches and just coaches on our team in general. So I'm going to share my my screen because it's easier for me. It's more organized for me to just do it this way. Okay, so real quick before we dive into that, I wanted to make sure you guys know, with tomorrow being November 1st, happy Halloween, by the way. I don't know if I said that on the recording. Happy Halloween, but with tomorrow being November 1st, you will have a newsletter hitting your inbox from me tomorrow. If you've not already seen it, there are a few things that you should know. First of all, if you are tuning into this call tonight before midnight and you don't have your summit ticket, you've got to get that summit ticket now while it's on special. We've got that promotion going on, especially for the $200 travel cash. Like, that was a crazy cool opportunity. And then I've also posted something today that mentioned to you guys that all of the challenge packs that are being featured for November are actually, they've already released them on sale. So technically, if you're still pushing for Success Club this month, in October, you can actually utilize those sales that we thought weren't starting until tomorrow. They've started earlier, so that's cool. Lots of challenge packs, $20 off for the month of November. So they're calling it No Excuses November. So hopefully this social media strategy that we're going to talk about tonight is going to help you rock Success Club early in the month in November. We have a team-led shift shop group starting on November 5th, so next week. And hopefully you guys are utilizing that gratitude content that I shared last week in the team page. Hopefully you're putting that to good use with your challengers, whether it's people that are going to do the shift shop group with the big team, or if it's your own personal group. Hopefully you guys utilize that as well. So let's go ahead and dive into talking about a social media plan. My hope for you is to understand when you come away from this call that, you know, failing to plan is planning to fail. Having something mapped out for your month, your week, your overall strategy for your business when it comes to your social media is going to be how you succeed. So that's point number one. Point number two, I want you guys to come away from this with a sample calendar. So if you haven't already, maybe pull up the planner that I uploaded into the team page earlier today, the social media planner, and or the end of the quarter calendar that I shared last week in the Body Electric team page. So looking at our next 2 or 3 months, hopefully while we're having this call, you can kind of jot some notes down on the calendar to create your monthly plan from here through January. So, and then of course, one question that I've been getting often from a lot of coaches is how often should I be inviting? So we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between curiosity marketing versus call to action marketing, and hopefully I can clarify some things there too. So it starts with this, right? You start with the big picture and then you dwindle it down to the day-to-day. And so the first plan, the first thing that you have to tackle is the month. So hopefully having the Body Electric team plan for the next 2 to 3 months helps you determine what you're going to do in your personal business for the next 2 to 3 months as well. Maybe you're going to do something in tandem with our group. You're going to add people to our groups. You're going to utilize that. Maybe you're going to run some free groups in addition to what we are doing as a team. Whatever the case is, you should be mapping out your month ahead of time. So you should be knowing, for the month of November, obviously what you're doing challenge group wise. And probably even know what you're going to be doing in December, because you're going to be inviting to your December groups in the month of November. So for us, I'm just going to use this as an example so that you guys have a direct reference. We have the Gratitude Shift Shop group happening in November, and then in December we've got Shaun T Fan Fest happening, which is like a hybrid 3-week calendar of Shaun T workouts. So we're going to use that sort of as our guideline for tonight when it comes to planning your month. So the goal here is to kind of look at your month in relation to your goals. So like I kind of already alluded to a little bit, when you find yourself often pushing for Success Club on the 30th or the 31st of the month, most likely it's because there hasn't been a specific strategy in place. It's not that just, Susie fell through and she can't make this happen now because she's not getting paid or whatever. That's not the real reason. The real reason is we haven't mapped out a strategy for the month to make that happen sooner. So my point here is this, okay? So I think this should be sort of a general guideline for you when you're looking at the month ahead. So I'm going to give you the example of November, December, but this goes for every month when you're mapping out your month ahead. So for the first week of November, I think is still a great opportunity for you to be inviting to your gratitude group, right? So if I was looking at my month plan on that template that I shared today, I would just kind of write in, the first week of November that my focus for my social media is going to be inviting to that gratitude group, okay? Then the second and third weeks of November, I'm going to start inviting to my Shaun T group. Now, I should specify to you guys that I would not probably be using Shaun T very much in my actual posts, but just for our own reference, right? That's the group I would be inviting to. So for the second and third weeks of November, I would be focused on inviting to that. And then in the fourth week of November, the third week of November would be my last call. So a lot of people think once it gets down to the 25th of the month, then I'll do my last call, then I'll send out a last email blast. No, my recommendation for you is to actually back that up a little bit, right? So put out your final calls to action for that group earlier, like around day 20 of the month, right? So in this case, probably right before Thanksgiving, or maybe immediately after Thanksgiving, put out your last call for your December group. Does that make sense? And that way you're locking in Success Club before the very last hour of the month. And then the fourth week of the month, the way I look at that is that's sort of your incentivizing week. So I'll tell you guys how I handle my own personal business. If I hit Success Club early in the month, like if I've already hit that goal by the 5th or the 10th or the 15th of the month, then the fourth week of the month, I really put a lot more energy myself into what value I can add to people. Can I share some recipes that I like? Can I, send out an email blast with some recipes that I like? I don't really put a whole lot of thought and intention into more invites because I feel like I've done a lot of inviting. I've hit my goal for that particular month. So the fourth week of my month is sort of like my flex week. Does that make sense? I can kind of breathe a little bit. I can map out the next month ahead. I start putting out value posts and that sort of thing. But in the cases where I haven't hit Success Club and I'm really pushing in the fourth week of the month, that's when I pull out all of my incentives, right? My $20 gift card, my flash sale, all those types of things. So don't, when you're looking at your 4-week calendar for the month ahead, be thinking about having your last call be sooner, like the 20th or 21st of the month, and then use the very last few days of the month to just be sort of your incentivizing time / mapping out the next month, okay? So you're kind of creating your own deadline here on your calendar. And then last but not least, your coaching invites, your curiosity posts related to coaching should just kind of be sprinkled throughout the month. So I'm going to give you some guidelines for that here in a second. So then we go from just sort of the overall general month plan, right? We know the first week of November, we're inviting to the gratitude group. The second 2 weeks of November, We're inviting to our Sean T group. Our last calls to action posts are going to be somewhere around the 20th or 21st of the month. And then the last week of the month are going to be value posts, value information, and incentivizing if needed, right? Then we take a look at those specific weeks, because now we have an overall plan for those weeks. Now we take a look and say, okay, let's map out the week. So again, there's a weekly template inside that social media planner that you can reference. But the idea here is to really get creative, right? Like if you're just going to look at it and say, oh, it's time for me to invite to my Sean T group, and you literally just throw up a post with a picture of Sean T, there's not a lot of like creativity there. There's not a lot of connecting with people. And that's really the idea, is to say, okay, this is the group that I'm offering. How can I now connect people to that group? Okay. So what I mean by that is sitting down and having sort of a brainstorm session to say, what is it that I really want to do? What kind of people am I after for this particular group? Okay. It takes a little bit of intentionality behind, figuring that out. So for the gratitude group, for the month of November, these are some ideas that I had for you, but this is kind of what I'm getting at. People if they sign up for this group, they're going to be getting morning text messages from you, right? That sort of positivity in the morning from their coach. That's something cool that a lot of people want. Like I've mentioned to you guys before, I've run the gratitude group every November since I've been a coach, and it's a huge hit. Like people they want that positivity. They want to head into the holiday season with gratitude. It's a really cool thing. And so that's something that can attract people. Also just keeping Thanksgiving top of mind, not getting wrapped up in the holiday hustle, not getting wrapped up in sort of the beginning of what people look at as the 3 holidays of chaos, right? Kind of keeping their mind calm and relaxed and heading into the holiday season with intentionality, and then staying on track with their health goals despite all the feasting at Thanksgiving. So those are just 3 different approaches that you could take to inviting to the gratitude group when it comes to content, right? And that's what I mean by sitting down, coming up with, okay, here's my group. Now, who am I after for this group, and what kind of people might be interested? And these are the people I think that would be interested in that gratitude group. Same thing goes for like our Transform 20 group that's coming in January. That's the reason we're doing the Sean T, prep group in December, because we want people who are after that sort of feeling, that athletic training type of challenge group. We want people to experience the preparation and then head straight into Transform 20. So what might entice people to join to that? Transformational program, right? Like everything Sean T is always transformational. Before and afters are always phenomenal. The 20-minute workout program, right? We're going to be doing a lot of T25 in that actual prep group in December. So it'll be very similar to the Transform 20. So shorter workouts, transformation, athletic movements. I always like to use the language aim to maintain during the holiday season. A lot of people, if you start talking to them about losing weight, they know they're going to eat grandma's cookies. So they're like, I'll just wait till January. But if you talk to them about maintaining their weight and making wiser choices, that's something that people do, find themselves interested in. And then of course, give yourself the gift of health. Those are just a couple of different phrases that I have used when marketing for holiday time of year challenge groups. So just kind of, making sure that you're looking at your week ahead, or the 4 separate weeks of the month of November or December, and creating a plan around what you want your content to look like. And it doesn't have to be, could be something you have going on in your personal life that you want to attach to your overall plan for that week. But just setting aside the time to brainstorm that content is huge. And then lastly, we plan our posts. So this is where I wanted to talk a little bit about, curiosity marketing versus calls to action, because I think they get confused. So some of you guys right now are participating in that Rank Attack group with me. You're pushing to Diamond here before the end of the year. And this is something that we've talked about in that group this week, kind of just the difference between curiosity posts and calls to action. So what's interesting is, if you guys want to see an example, a real life recent example, I did post a curiosity post about coaching by sharing a little bit of my story working in corporate America. I just shared that maybe like 2 nights ago on Facebook. I had a few people reach out and they were just like, oh gosh, I remember those days, like people that I worked with in my corporate job or whatever. And I got a lot of traction on that post. It was just a curiosity post. But the difference is that I talked about how Beachbody had changed my life, but I never said the phrase, Beachbody has changed my life. So in other words, I was sharing a story, I was building curiosity, I was talking about how my life is different than it was before, and I was piquing the curiosity of my followers. But nowhere in that actual text did I say, message me for details, or if you'd like to hear about how coaching can change your life, drop me a message, right? Like there was no specific call to action. And both of those things are necessary. You have to have both types of things going for you with your social media plan. But the curiosity posts need to be a little heavier than your calls to action. Does that make sense? So what I see a lot of time is I see a lot of coaches that are willing to put out a call to action to their challenge group over and over and over again. They talk about getting fit. They talk about getting healthy. They talk about drinking a daily shake. Like they feel super comfortable writing that call to action type message invitation on their social. But they seem to sort of repeat themselves. Their calls to action looks a lot the same every single time they make a call to action post. They're not putting a lot of curiosity behind it. So they might just randomly throw up a post about joining their team. Message me if you're interested in joining my team, or message me if you're interested in becoming part of my tribe. But yet there haven't been any posts recently about the value that the tribe brings them or their story about being a coach. Does that make sense? So it's sort of like it's sort of a cliffhanger. Like you're inviting people to join you, but they're not really sure why they'd want to, because there hasn't been anything to pique their curiosity. So 80% of the time should be dedicated to curiosity posts, which really a lot of you guys, I could tell you that, the posts that you're making, if you just chop off the ending where you say, message me for details, it's going to be a curiosity post. If you take out the language about your team, your tribe, Beachbody, challenge group, all those sort of like businessy phrases, if you take those out and you take out the actual message me for details, you've got a curiosity post. Okay, so that's the only difference, is that you're asking for something from somebody or you're not. You're just sharing something about your personal experience. Does that make sense? So both are needed. So remember that the one thing that inspires people the most is not necessarily who you are now, but who you have become. And so the way that we translate that to people is through our stories. This was a huge theme at leadership this year. Michael Neiman's niece spoke on this topic about how story really has the power to connect people. And I have fallen victim to this myself. Like I can talk into, like, I think when I was doing 80 Day Obsession earlier this year, I really did become obsessed with the program, with the way that I felt, with my workouts every day, and when you're pressing play and you feel like Donald Stamper is your best friend, like all of a sudden you feel like you're part of the cast of 80 Day Obsession. Like I'm saying, like, there's this sort of feeling that we all have as coaches, that we feel connected to the company, right? Like we feel connected to the passion that Carl has, the programs themselves. We all like bow down to Shaun T, right? Like we have this sort of fandom about what we do, but nobody necessarily cares about that. Like nobody else really cares about what we're into or that the nitty gritty. But they may care about how far we've come. They may care about our transformation story. They may care about who we used to be versus who we are now. And that's how you're going to meet people where they are, is by meeting them where you used to be. Does that make sense? So that was the reason behind my post a couple of days ago, because I realized recently I haven't really posted a lot about, what my life looked like before coaching, or what my life looked like before full-time coaching. Right? Like it's been a long time since I've shared any stories from my corporate life or the dreams that I had for myself then. And so why not pull one out, right? Like why not pull one out and share it? Because people want to root for you, and people want to follow other inspiring people. And so they're more likely to reach out to you about an opportunity or to just be your friend, build a relationship, if they feel like they can trust you and if they feel like your story is one that they can relate to themselves. So sharing pictures of yourself versus sharing pictures of, like I said before, Shaun T or Autumn or whatever, like pictures of yourself, help that transparency, transformations, testimonials of your challengers, stories that connect people with who you were before versus who you are now. And then, like I said, don't use the phrases like challenge group, Shakeology, all those sort of businessy phrases that can kind of ruin it for you. Okay, so when it comes to calls to action, here are my tips for that. So I want you to focus on creating scarcity and urgency in your calls to action. So this is something that I see missing a lot from the calls to action that I do see from coaches. I see a lot of, drop your favorite emoji if you're interested in hearing more about my group. I see a lot of, detailed analysis of what the group is going to involve, right? Like bullet points about the nutrition plans and the workouts and the coaching and the support, and all that's really cool. But I don't feel like when I read it myself and I think about if I was a consumer or a potential customer, there's nothing about it that makes me think I need to message you right now. So if you're constantly writing a call to action that looks the same, that doesn't have a sense of scarcity or urgency, it's likely that there are a lot of people interested, but no one's going to message you about it. Does that make sense? So the idea is to create a call to action that really evokes enthusiasm and that gets them to actually message you. So if you say something like, I saw this last week where this lady was like, I have 10 spots. She might have even said 15 spots. And I thought, 10 or 15 spots? Like, that's tons of spots. Like, what's the likelihood that 10 or 15 people are going to message you tonight? So you want to keep it to like, I have 1 spot remaining, 2 spots remaining, or I'm looking for 5 women to lead through the month of November with gratitude, whatever. Like, you want to make sure that you have that sense of urgency and that you limit the number of people who are able to enter your group. So people will reach out to you. Now, does that mean that after you have 3 people join your challenge group that you're done inviting and you're done and you're not going to sign somebody else up? No, but you've created the scarcity in, people wanting to reach out to you to grab one of those spots. So you're not going to necessarily stop getting people on board with your challenge group, but your goal, of course, is to fill it, right, with 3 people or 5 people anyway. So announcing that helps people reach out to you. Share who the group is for. I have found that the more detailed you can be about who you're looking for, the more people will say, she's talking about me, and the more likely they are to reach out to you. So if you say, like, for this particular challenge group, I'm looking for the busy mom who really has no time for a workout every day, but who might be able to fit one in 4 days a week. For the mom who wants an easy meal on the go, who wants crockpot recipe ideas, right? Like, the more specific you can be about who you're looking for a specific group, and then literally identify that in your call to action, the more likely you are for people to reach. And I've actually had it be where I put out a post like that and I get like a guy message me and he'll be like, I saw your post and I was just curious, it said you're looking for 3 women, but so I guess that means that I can't do it, but could my wife do it? I'm like, no, you can do it too. It doesn't mean that I'm only looking for this person, but it's just my way of describing the type of person that I'm looking for in a particular group. Does that make sense, you guys? So don't be afraid to specify. And again, you might have to specify in multiple ways. So you might have to write out a description of who you're looking for on a Tuesday, and then depending on the traction you get, either use that again on a Thursday or a Friday, or change it up and see what you get. But sometimes describing people and people saying, oh, wow, that sounds like it would be perfect for me, right, is the way that people become interested. Putting a specific call to action, like drop an emoji or comment below, gives them an action point. So it tells them what to do. And that's kind of what you're looking to do all the time when it comes to this business, is really direct people on what to do. People are looking for direction. So I find that the whole drop an emoji or comment below tends to work better for me than send me a message. I find people don't always want to send me a message, but they will comment on the post. Like, it's for some reason a little bit less barrier for them. So including that is also helpful. And then last but not least, make sure you're not beating around the bush, right? So I hate it when people are like, this is my group that I have coming up, 3 spots remaining, but then they don't give any sort of direction on what the person should do if they're interested, right? Like they just assume that like the person knows what they do. So don't assume that your potential customer has been following you for years and they know exactly what they're supposed to do when they want to be interested in when they're interested in information about a challenge group. Like you need to be telling them exactly what they should say or do to get your attention. Okay, general rule of thumb. So, because I knew this question would be asked. This is my plan. Like in the last 6 weeks, I've been following a social media plan. I've been writing mine out in my planner. So I've been a little bit more consistent with this. But for me, like my calls to action regarding coaching tend to happen about once a week. But my curiosity posts, I make sure to include something about my team or the business side of things for me, the curiosity piece twice a week. So 2 curiosity posts about coaching per week, 1 call to action about joining my team. And then same thing goes for challenge groups, right? Like only I post every single day something about health and fitness, something curiosity based about my recipes, right? Like this week for me, it's been all about soup. Like I've shared 2 different soup recipes. And then today I posted a call to action and I happened to use a soup graphic because I'm like, well, people have been seeing my soup posts and they're really liking the recipes. So I'm going to use a soup picture and I'm going to post a call to action about my challenge group. So curiosity posts about your challenge group or about health and fitness in general every day. That's part of your job as a coach, with at least 2 calls to action per week about your challenge group. So if you're reading that and you're like, wow, that's a lot more than I'm currently doing, just know that every time you make a post, not everybody on your social media is seeing it, right? So if I make a call to action post today and I get 13% of my social following to see it, and that's it, and I just count on that one being my only call to action for the week, I'm not getting enough eyes on my call to action posts, right? So the more frequent, the better. And then of course, if you don't already do this, keep a hashtag list for Instagram. I think Tara mentioned this to us recently that like, since she's a teacher by day, she's a girl mom, you know, she's a girl boss when it comes to Beachbody, she's a fitness instructor. So she's got different hashtags that she uses depending on the type of post that she's making about the different areas of her life. So she keeps a note, and I do this too, in her phone, where you can just simply copy and paste the hashtags into your Instagram. So you don't have to constantly remember what those are when you're making those posts. So finally, this all would be completely irrelevant and pointless if we were not assessing what's working and what's not working. So, you know, most of us, I think, have a general feeling as to whether or not something that we're trying is working or not. You know, like I know that the post that I made Monday night with my corporate story, I think it went over well. I got like 80 likes. I had 3 or 4 comments. I had a couple messages about it. So it seemed to get decent traction and viewership. But another post that I made a week or so ago that it was a little bit more about tribe and team, didn't get as much traction, right? So I'm starting to learn, which is why I'm telling you guys that the types of posts that I'm seeing work well are the types that involve story, are the types that really involve a lot of, this is who I was before, this is who I am now, this is what's changed for me. So yeah, assessing what's done well, what's not, and what has potentially caused them to fail or succeed, so that you know whether or not to repeat that same plan the next time. So again, people want to root for you. People want to know what your vision is, not just for your business, but for your life. They want to know about your small wins. They want to know all of your stories. People, you're putting yourself out there as a coach, and people are following you, right? Like we know that. People are following you whether you know it or not. But the more you share and the more, the more stories you share to connect with people, the more likely they are to trust you and reach out. I heard this on a podcast recently, but I didn't remember which podcast I heard it on. But I heard someone say, you know, why is it that everybody loves Oprah? You know, Oprah, she was an awesome TV show host, and she was an awesome question asker on her show and everything else. But mostly we love Oprah because we know a lot about her. We know a little bit about her love life. We know about her struggle with her weight. We know about her her giving heart and her, her the donations that she makes to third world countries and all the different things that she's contributed to. Like, we know a lot about her life and who she is through the stories that either she has told or that we've heard about her. And so it has nothing to do with what she does. So if we're equating this to a coach, people aren't necessarily going to reach out to you because you're a coach or because you lead rockstar awesome challenge groups. But if they know a little bit about your life, what you're struggling with, what you're successful with, what you're shooting for, what your family life is like, that's when they can really get to know you and trust you and connect with you. So number one, a social media plan helps with your brand, but you still have to talk to people every day. So just a disclaimer that all of this stuff that I've shared tonight is important, but you still have to be private messaging people in addition to all this, right? Like sending those private messages, building relationships in that way. And number two, putting out great content is one thing, but then listening to people, commenting and liking on other people's posts, being a good follower is also important. So those are just two disclaimers that I wanted to share. So my last tips for you, and then we can open it up for questions, are just when it comes to your actual content, please don't half-ass it. Don't just say, oh my gosh, it's time for me. Today's the day that I got to post a call to action. Oh, let me just go through and find an old picture of me working out. I'll throw that up there. I'll post up here about the same thing I always say, which is, meal plans, blah, 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 and I'll just copy and paste it. Like, please don't half-ass your calls to action. Don't half-ass your content. Really put some thought and energy into your stories and the stuff that you share on your social, because as John Maxwell says, everybody communicates, but few people connect. And I have personally found that the more detail you share when it comes to those stories, the more people are likely to connect with you, right? Versus just a copy paste or your sweaty selfie over and over and over again. So I have recently started scheduling some posts just because with a toddler and with crazy bedtime evenings and stuff like that, I know that my posts typically get better viewership in the evening. So I have been scheduling some of my posts to go up at like 8, 8:30, 9 p.m. in the evening when I'm super busy. So I schedule them during nap time or when I have a free moment, and then they go up later that day. So that's always an option too. Like, that's something that you can do if you are tight on time. And then it's okay to reuse content. So if you have a good picture, a good story, like the picture that I just posted and the story I just shared about my corporate job is going to go on Instagram as well. But I'm not going to do it at the same time. I'm going to wait 2 or 3 days and then use the same story and the same graphic with hashtags on Instagram too. And I think I mentioned this on the email marketing webinar a few weeks ago, that a lot of times the types of calls to action that you, like the ones where you spend a lot of time writing up a call to action, using the right photo, putting that all together to do a call to action to coaching or to a challenge group, why not just copy and paste that into an email blast? Because that that ensures that people are going to be opening that email from you, even if they didn't see it on your social. So that's all I have for you guys when it comes to that. But hopefully just having just the concept of knowing that it's important to map out your month, your week, and even your calls to action is a huge step in the right direction if you're not already doing that. Does anybody have any specific points or questions?
I have a question. So something that I feel like makes me feel stuck about trying to plan out this far in advance is like having images. Like, how do you have like so many photos? Like, I don't know how to plan out what I'm going to say, because a lot of times I think of what I'm going to say based on the picture that I took, but I don't know how to take 3 months of pictures. I don't know. That's where I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah. So what I would say is like, so you're going to map out your month. So, for the month of November, kind of like we just said, the first week you're going to spend possibly sharing about the gratitude group, inviting to that. Second 2 weeks, you're going to be looking at inviting people to the December group. I don't think you necessarily have to write out your posts in advance. I mean, unless like for the week ahead, I think you should have an idea of what you're doing, what you're saying. Sorry, something just fell. But I don't think you need to necessarily know what you're saying specifically and what words or pictures you're using for like the end of November right now. So you have your month plan, and then week to week, you have a plan for the week ahead. Does that make sense? So that's the way I've been doing it. So like I know generally what I'm inviting to for the first week of November, the second, the third, the fourth, even the first week of December, second week of December. But as far as like specific messaging and what picture I'm going to use and what I'm going to say, that's all stuff that I'm going to sit down and figure out Sunday night when I'm thinking about my posts for the week. And then I can use pictures that I took the week before. You know, recently I've been doing a lot of like grabbing old pictures, like from like 2 years ago or like a year ago. I even have some professional pictures that I think we had done before Ellery was born. So there, I know they're 2 years old. So just, you know, people don't necessarily know when you took the picture, but using a variety of them. So I don't think you have to stress out about having like all of your words written out for, you know, the month ahead. But if you know, like, okay, for this week, I'm going to try to fill, you know, I'm going to try to hit Success Club early in November. So I'm going to try to get a couple more people in my gratitude group. And so this week next week, I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be inviting to that gratitude group. When do I want to invite to it? Well, the sooner the better, right? So for me personally, tomorrow, November 1st, I have a call to action going up about my November gratitude group, because Halloween's going to be over. People are going to be like ready now. Like now all of a sudden they're going to be posting stuff about Christmas tomorrow. You guys know that's happening. It's going to happen tomorrow. So why not? I'm going to go ahead and put a call to action up now. Like just a reminder, my gratitude group starts, blah, blah, blah. This is what's going on. This is who I'm looking for. Here's what I want you to do if you wanted to participate in the group, right? So a call to action is going to go up for me on the 1st. And then I generally know like, okay, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, whatever, like I'm going to be putting up curiosity posts about that. So things I'm grateful for, that sort of thing. Does that make sense? So you have like a plan for the week ahead, but your calls to action, your 1 to 2 calls to action per week, are where you dedicate your time and energy into crafting something, to writing something creative. Does that make sense? I've found you guys, those of you guys who are on here live, when we were doing the tracker for several months, I noticed that there were so many coaches that were surprising themselves with how few calls to action they were putting out, but how many, well, let me put it this way. I think what was really happening was a lot of calls to action were going out, were being put up on social, but there was not much intentionality behind them. That makes sense? So it was kind of like a join my challenge group, or I can't wait for this program to release, or whatever. Like those were still sort of calls to action, but they didn't have the intentionality behind them. They didn't go after a particular market. They didn't have specific dates. They didn't have scarcity. You know what I mean? Like that type of structure. But there was a lot, and there still is a lot of, here's my workout that I did today, and here's my shake that I did today, and here's my lunch and my breakfast and everything else, which it's hard because it's like we get in this trap of like, doesn't everybody want to know what I ate for lunch? And I'm the same way, right? Like I'm like, this lunch was so good. Like who doesn't want to see it? But the truth is, unless it applies to somebody else, they just don't care. So if we put strategy and intentionality behind this, then I have found that you're thinking more about what people can take from you versus what you can share about your personal life that they may or may not care about themselves. Nobody cares if I pressed play today, really. I care, but how can I take that little piece of information and make it so that someone else might care? or that they might be inspired to do that themselves. And that's a huge, huge transition for a lot of coaches. So one thing that I have in mind is to, it's been a really long time, like, I mean, probably like 4 years since we have ever done any sort of like writing workshop when it comes to social media, you know, literally like copywriting, like what to write for your social media posts, calls to action, etc. I led a training on it, I think like 4 years ago for Sparta Nation. And we haven't come back to that topic since. And so I think it might be super helpful because I think it's something that is in my skill set area. Like, I think it's something that I have excelled in, is figuring out how to write in a way that connects with people. And so if I can translate that to you and share that with the team on how to create a successful story post, or you know, how to write a call to action that will get interest, those types of things would be useful. So
Yeah, even if you did, like, when I listened to that PB&J method thing, what I liked about it, it was like kind of like the ad lib, you know, where it gave you chunks to fill in. It like gave you a structure, like a template that you could personalize.
mm-hmm.
So that's really helpful for me. It's like a color by number, you know, like getting the idea of like the structure of how to word something, or how to, like, what the flow is. And then like, oh, okay, I can take that and I can put in my own information. But I think that would be really useful to know, like, oh, I should start with a funny quip, and then I should move to a deep, dark, whatever. And then, you know, like
right. So you're looking, you're looking for the storyboard is what we would call it. So you're looking for like the template of what a successful story would look like.
Yeah, and then I feel like if you do it a few times, then you can start to like do it yourself.
Yeah,
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's good. No, I think I was thinking about doing that originally with the body electric surge call that I want to do in January, but I think maybe we'll do it sooner than that. But today I did post a prompt. So it's a social media prompt. So it kind of gets you thinking about things that you could post about, or ways that you could kick off a post about your story. So that's something that you could check out in the meantime. Kind of get your wheels spinning a little bit. But I will tell you this, just to give you an answer for now. Most people, good. Most people connect with you when you share, I'm trying to think of how to word this, like when you're reading a really good novel, right? Like, what is the thing that makes you love that novel? Not just the characters, but most likely it's the detail, and it's the way the author writes the detail. So if you're reading, like with it being Halloween, if you're reading like a spooky thriller of a book, right? Like a Dean Koontz, like dark story, there's a certain feel, there's a certain vibe of that story all the way through the book, right? To where like you read it in your bed at night and you're a little bit nervous to turn out your nightstand light, right? Because you're like, oh, it's a little creepy. There's just a certain tone. There's a certain way that he describes the room. There's a certain way that he describes the body. There's a certain way that he describes, and it's in those tiny details that you feel like you just can't put the book down, right? Like, because you're connecting with it on a level where you can visualize exactly what that writer is telling you, like the story that they're telling you, right? Like, that's why people say all the time that the book is better than the movie, because the writer does such a good job of portraying the scene and the story, that the story in your mind is way better than the story they put up in the theater, right? Like the visual that they put out in the theater. So the way I've always thought about this, the very first, I was a writing major in college, and the very first experience I ever had with creative writing was I was thrown into this 7th and 8th grade gifted and talented writing program that I had no idea that I was even qualified to be in. And the very first day, the teacher put a Tupperware bowl of moldy. They were moldy, nasty grapes that were from her refrigerator. And she put them in the middle of the room. We were sitting in like a horseshoe shape. And she put them in the middle of the room on a table. And she said, you have 52 minutes in this class. And I want you to write about that bowl of grapes for 52 minutes. She's like, I want you to, and nobody better look up. You better be writing about it the entire 52 minutes. And so when you're sitting there and you think to yourself like, gosh, I got to write about this bowl of grapes for 50 minutes, you write down every detail you can write to the point where you're writing a story about those grapes, right? And so what comes as a result of that is this beautiful description or this beautiful story or this creativity that's come out of somebody's mind that someone else reads and connects with, because everything started with the minute detail. And so I hope that when you guys read my posts, the reason that you like them, if you like them, is because there's some level of detail there that connects with you, that helps you visualize what's going on in my story. Like, I don't know, did you guys read the post that I made Monday night about my boss? Did you come away from that thinking I didn't say he was an a-hole, but did you come away from that story kind of like visualizing what that experience was like? Like, she walked in expecting this to be an interview. He's got his hands behind his head, his feet kicked up on the desk. Like, I specifically shared it that way because I wanted you to just be like rooting for me, right? Like, gosh, like, she went in there like thinking this was an interview, and here he was like telling her she didn't deserve it, and right? Like, I want people to side with me. And so, but those are the details that I chose to share. And to this day, I wrote a post 6 years ago about how I used to carry my blue migraine painkiller around in my pocket. And Chris and I had Colts season tickets. I always had that blue painkiller in my pocket because I always had a headache and I always wanted to have it handy. And if I didn't have it, it would cause me to have a panic attack and blah, blah, blah. And I shared this whole story about it one time 6 years ago. And I still have people tell me that. They're like, I remember the time you shared the story about the blue pills that you kept in your pocket. Right? And so it's those small details I have found that really cause people to connect with you. You guys have heard me say a million times that, like, if you talk about your father's hands, that usually makes other people think about their father's hands, right? If you start describing the detail of your father's hands. So just finding that commonality, finding that specific detail, that moldy bowl of grapes that you can tell a story about, versus what I find most people do, which is they tell a story. Once upon a time, there was a girl and she didn't like her corporate job and she didn't feel like she got the opportunities that she wanted. And so this is what she did, right? It's more of like this high level front to back, beginning to end, versus sharing the detail. Jackie, you're a writing girl. Would you agree? You're a teacher. So
yes, I thought very much about teaching my writing classes when you told the moldy grape story.
Yeah.
We did a lot of that type of thing. But yeah, I think it's those details. And I think that came up when Abby asked the question in the thread recently about the lengthy post. And, you know, I was a writing teacher and am a writing person, and I get lengthy. But I think to really connect with people, sometimes you have to go into that detail. Mm-hmm. I liked your tip too recently, just about describing that one specific scene, that one specific moment.
Yes.
And really letting people kind of dig into that rather than my whole life in a nutshell.
Right. Yep. Yeah, so that's something that I'd like to go into more detail with the team and help you guys kind of figure out how to.
I think this is great. I just printed the prompts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's just super helpful. Like Katie said, it's not necessarily a storyboard, but it's like a starting place.
Right.
Like I was like, okay, I can even check one of these off. And being a writing person, I can pick one of them and I can go with it.
Right. Yep.
But just having those as some place to start is super helpful.
Yeah, cool. Good deal. Awesome. Okay, well, tomorrow starts a new month, so this was the perfect time to do this. Hopefully you guys have a hot minute to kind of map out your month and think about what you want to do to solidify your social media plan for the month of November. But if you have any questions, please let me know. This is something I'm kind of leveling up. I used to have a general plan, like a monthly plan. I've always lived by a monthly plan for myself, including my social But in the last 5 or 6 weeks, I've really upped it and really put more strategy and intentionality behind my week to week. And it's definitely helping me stay focused. So hopefully it can help you guys too. Cool. All right, you guys, don't go eat the candy. Go throw it away.
I have one slightly unrelated question.
Yeah,
Is
sure.
there a schedule for the shift shop posts? Are we changing that up from our?
Yeah, I think I will change that up. I haven't sent it out yet because I know there were some people that don't have folks to add for this particular group. So I figured I'd just mix it up a little bit.
Okay.
So yeah, I will reach out to the people I have not heard from yet and see if they have people in it, and then I'll put that together.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So I plan on covering, I have the meal plan. What's tomorrow? Thursday? Yeah. I have the meal plan to share, and then we kick off the group Monday. So probably Friday or Saturday, I'll have that new outline.
Okay, awesome.
For the posts for next week. Cool. Thanks, you guys. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon.